So, hey guys, I'm excited about today. I have a pretty special guest with me. We're going to do the same as we did last week. This will be posted on YouTube, but also be on the podcast, so you can listen or watch or do both. Either's fine. You'll want to hear this fella's story a couple times, so hit him in both places. If you listened last week, you heard his mother, Betsy Morris. She was on, and she shared what it was like to be a parent of someone in the military. You heard her refer to Ben's brother, Greg. Look no further. There he is. So we have Greg Morris with us today. You know, you heard that Greg was instrumental in shutting off the news, shutting off the noise to guard and promote Betsy's peace during the time of Ben's deployment. So I'm excited to have Greg with us today. He and his wife do still live in Webster County, and they have one daughter, and his wife is a teacher at a local school, and she is a wonderful teacher. Everyone knows her, loves her, and we are just excited that Greg's decided to share his story. I'm going to ask you, is there anything you want to add to or correct in your introduction?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
you summed it up well.
Okay, so for those that will watch us, we are together in person. Normally, you guys know that when I interview a guest and they want to also be on YouTube, well, sometimes they don't want to, but I convince them.
Say, did I have a choice?
I mean, sometimes I just kind of highly persuade them. Greg is actually the first interview that I've done in person. Like, we're side by side, knee to knee. So you may see me looking at him more because you know that my heart is for this just be a conversation. Like, we're sitting at a bench or in the bleachers at a basketball game waiting for the Highlanders to come out, and he's catching me up on what's been going on with him. So I'm going to let Greg kick us off. He'll tell you a little bit about what he's been through, and we're happy that he's here with us for many, many reasons. So, okay, Gregory Morris, tell us about a few years ago in 2015, Greg's life changed in a way that he did not anticipate, and it did impact him, his wife, his daughter, his parents, everyone that loved him. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about how everything was discovered and started, and then we'll just listen and learn along the way.
Well, I mean, we all go through things in our life, you know.
Yeah.
That's just part of being human and existing
That's
in this
right.
world. You're gonna go through stuff. So I guess if you want the origin story, it really started back in 2014.
Okay.
January 2014, there was what was called Freedom Industries in Charleston, West Virginia, and it was a tank that failed and polluted like all the drinking water for like
I do
100,000
remember
people
that.
in
Yeah,
Charleston.
I
It was
do
a huge
remember that.
thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with my
Yeah.
job, we were there, and we were there like 24/7 for months, and then as a result of that, we got a bonus, which was a whole $250.
Oh,
So
go
after
crazy
taxes,
with that.
it was like
It
$150.
was a little bit,
you know,
yeah.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this money. I was really kind of just, I'm a big fisherman. I just kind of started getting into like fly fishing.
Mhm.
So I was like, I'm going to use this money. I'm going to take a fly fishing class. And so that's what I did. You know, October, it's been right about, October of 2014. Took this fly fishing class, went to Elk Springs Resort, had a great day.
Nice. Yeah.
You know, but I came home that night and my arm was so sore. I was like, this is weird. You know, I fished a lot, never had anything like this go
Right.
on. I had a bunch of swelling. I was like, man, this is weird. Well, you know, whatever. I'm a guy, so what do we do?
Yeah.
Put it off.
Put it off. That's right.
Put
And
it
you
off.
maybe did you chalk it up to with fly fishing? You use
Yeah,
your
I
arm
thought
a
it was like
lot
an
more.
overuse injury. I was
Yeah,
like, man, I used it a bunch. I'm just not used to it. I'm new to the sport. You know, this is,
Yeah.
I guess this is what happens. And I had this small knot come up, like in my armpit area. And I was like, that's weird. So I went to just a local clinic, and great doctor. She was like, well, yeah, why don't you take some antibiotics? It's probably just a lymph node,
Right.
gut infection, whatever. So we do that, and we go back, and she's like, oh, well, let's try this antibiotic. If that didn't work, and we did that, and then kind of, it was just there. It didn't really get smaller, it didn't get bigger. I was like, well,
Yeah.
it'll go away, you know?
And how old were you at this time?
Gosh, I'd have probably been 28.
Yeah. So just
Yeah.
young, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything to be aware. Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, you're bulletproof at that age.
Yes. Exactly.
Still.
Right.
so finally, I think maybe in December, yeah, a whole 2 months later, I was finally like, I should probably get this looked at. So, but you know, our medical system, like, when you decide to do something about something like that, like, you're still appointments and weeks and weeks away. So, make an appointment, back with the doctor. The doctor's like, oh, let's send you to a, where she sent me to a surgeon or somebody. She's like, we just need to take that thing out of there.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. That's what we do. So, he's like, oh, let's do a ultrasound. I was like, okay, let's do an ultrasound. We do the ultrasound. I go back. I meet him again, like 2 weeks later, back to the office.
Yeah.
Meet him again. He's like, oh, let's do a CT scan. Okay, so whatever, schedule that. 2 weeks later, get back to the office. He's like, I don't know, let's just go in and take a biopsy.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks later, you know, the day finally comes. We go in. Of course, you know, I'm like, oh, this is nothing. You know, this is something, you know, whatever, inflamed. Something's going on. So we go in and we have the biopsy. It comes back out, and he's like, I remember, like, I was laying in the hospital bed post-operation. My wife's right here, and the surgeon's like, where you are. And I was like, so what do you think it is? You know, just inflammation. And I remember he like touched me. He's like, you have cancer. Like, I don't know what kind.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, but you have cancer. And that was like the first time, like, yeah,
Oh
really,
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
you know, like, you had that thought in your mind, but you just pushed it out. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm 28 years old.
That's what I was saying. You're so young. Like,
Yeah.
that's the last thing.
I'm 28
you
years
thought.
old.
Exactly.
There's this little bump under my arm. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't cancer.
Yeah. And you were very healthy and active otherwise. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Tried,
yes.
you know, tried
Yeah.
to be, you know, to the best of
Yeah.
my ability. And it was just like earth shattering. I
Sure.
remember me and my wife were just both speechless.
Mhm.
So we go home. We don't tell anybody. We don't tell family. We don't tell
Yeah.
anybody. We're like, well, let's wait for the biopsies to come back, you
Right.
know, and let's make sure before we sound the alarm. So we go back, and I remember, like, the surgeon came back in, and he had this like girl with him, and I don't know if she was like an intern or what she was, but I was like, why are you here? I just remember, like, looking at her, like, the whole time. I was like, why are you here? You
Yeah.
know? And he's like, Greg's like, I really thought you had like a lymphoma, because this was a lymph node that was swollen. He's like,
Yeah.
but we did the pathology, came back, this is melanoma, which means this is a skin cancer that has already progressed to your lymph nodes. So it's already like stage 2, stage 3. So like we didn't catch it early,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And if you know anything about melanoma, if it's not caught early, it's extremely dangerous
It is,
and
yes.
very deadly form of cancer. So I think us, just like the surgeon, were just in shock.
Sure.
And I remember.
Now that took place right after your biopsy.
Yeah, it
All
was like
this
the next
did?
week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the
okay.
next week we found out the pathology. We went
Yeah.
back, you know, found out
Yeah.
the pathology.
Can I ask you what? So you and Lindsay drove to this appointment for this biopsy.
Yeah.
Really not thinking much of it. Okay, so he comes in and tells you that. You get back in the vehicle. What is that like?
You're in a state of shock.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, we went to Walmart.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause
Okay.
we needed groceries, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but you're just in shock, you know? Like, you just
Yeah.
go, you just can't, the mind has a hard time processing that big of a paradigm shift.
Oh,
all of a
absolutely.
sudden,
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
you're just in shock,
Yeah.
you know? And,
Yeah.
you know, we came home, and one of the hardest things ever, we told my parents, you
Yeah.
know, what was going on. It's extremely hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely it would be.
Yeah.
So you went to the doctor. He's the doctor that completed the biopsy, right? Got the
Yeah.
pathology reports back, so you know a little bit of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, we know it's melanoma at this point.
Melanoma.
We know I do have cancer. It
Right.
is melanoma. At this point, it's in the lymph nodes, so we
Yeah.
know it's like advanced
It's
melanoma.
advanced, right?
You know,
So
we didn't
you
catch it
haven't
early.
told anyone to this point.
Just me and my wife.
You and your wife.
Yeah.
What? So if y'all weren't close before, I bet at that moment you certainly became very,
Yeah.
very close.
Yeah.
So now it's time you've got to tell people close to you. You have a young daughter that you'll need help
Yeah,
juggling
I mean,
because
she
you'll
would
have
been
appointments.
Like five
Yeah.
years old probably when that happened.
So you told your parents.
Yeah, we told them first. I think we drove straight to my parents' house
Yeah.
afterwards because we were like, I mean, eventually it starts to sink in what's
Sure.
happening. We drove there immediately after. We told them, you know, everybody's kind of just like us. We're just
Just
shocked. I mean,
Yeah,
just shocked,
absolutely
you know,
shocked, yes.
How is this 28-year-old, reasonably healthy young man, now has stage 2, stage 3 cancer just overnight. It feels like, kind of. Yeah, it was a real shock to us all, and man, the stress of those types of situations will do things to your body.
I imagine so. Yeah.
So like, we don't know how bad the cancer is. All we know is there's a spot here. It could be anywhere.
Right.
It could be in the brain. It could be in the stomach. It could be anywhere at this point.
Exactly.
So when you're under like that type of stress, your body does really weird things.
Yep.
And in addition to that, now you have the thought like, oh, is this cancer? And I remember my stomach just went crazy.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Now I know it was due to stress.
Yes.
But at the time I was like, well, this is it. It's in my stomach.
Yeah.
It's in my bowels. It's everywhere. Like, I'm done.
Well, that word in itself carries such a punch. You don't know. There's so much unknown about it. But yeah, absolutely, stress will wreak havoc on your body. Yeah.
Scary times.
Right. And your mind runs with that. I mean, mine would have, as you're saying that, mine would have done the same thing. Absolutely.
I mean, I'll say this, I was pretty strong-willed, sound individual, and I laid in my bedroom floor and cried.
Yeah, sure, that's right.
I'm not afraid to admit that now. I just cried, because you just didn't know what to do, I really kind of thought my life was over. Like, this is it,
And it's such a waiting game, too. You have to get into specialists, you have to get into this, you have to, absolutely. I could understand that. And I'm glad you shared that you cried. That's what we want people to hear. There's a side to this that people don't see.
Yeah.
And it's real. And I'm sure that as you were under the stress of that and crying, then your wife's trying to provide some sort of support and comfort to you. I mean, it's a joint effort. I'm sure it impacts everyone. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So once you got the initial, you're on your bedroom floor crying, like this is, your mind is kind of all over the place. You're not sure what's going on in your body, where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's our next step in this journey?
They immediately refer us. So we're at Summersville. They immediately refer us to Morgantown.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get you these appointments set up. So we get these appointments set up, and as we talked about previously, nothing's quick in the healthcare field.
That's right. Yeah.
My appointment was 5 weeks away.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow.
To get in to see the oncologist was 5 weeks away, and that seemed like an eternity.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would.
I can't describe just how agonizing every one of those days were. But that's also when I kind of got my first help from a higher power. I was spiraling out of control, really, just due to the amount of stress and just the unknown situation, and I was really in a bad place, and I went to church, and man, they rallied around me. They prayed for me.
So,
I didn't think I'd have any trouble, but
okay.
Sometimes it's hard.
It is hard, and I'm going to share just a part of Greg's story. Greg he didn't just one day stroll into a church. Greg had a long history. His mom and dad raised him in church. He knew of God as he spoke of a higher power. Is it okay if I refer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like my higher power's God, and I thought his was, but you don't want everyone has a different.
I use that term because
everyone.
The word God can be very off-putting to
sure.
them, and I don't want them to get that connotation.
Yeah. Stick around for the entire story, but indeed. So parents, and I'm preaching to myself as well. Keep praying for your kids. The times you drug them to church when they wanted to be elsewhere. The times that you made the decision for your household to be different, eventually the fruit of that is shown. So Greg did come to church. He knew of God, and is it safe to say you knew you couldn't do this in your own strength?
Yeah, I mean at that point, once you're faced with your own mortality, you look to anything
Absolutely,
to help you out.
And people do look to
you look to anything, and that's maybe some foreshadowing for down the road.
Right.
But yeah, so the church really rallied around me, and they really prayed for me, and I really got some relief from that. I got some spiritual peace that really helped me get to those first appointments and through that initial 5 weeks. But I knew even then, like, even though I enjoyed that peace that was given to me, I knew then it was like it's like if I gave you a piece of fruit, like you get to eat the fruit now, but you have to plant that seed and grow it and mature it if you want additional fruit.
Yeah.
And I knew that then that the only way I could continue in that peace was to plant and harvest and cultivate my own fruit of peace. So that really planted the seeds for what got me through the whole ordeal. Started there in the very beginning in those first few weeks. So, and I knew, like, nobody had to tell me that. Like, it was kind of weird. Like, I just knew that in my spirit, in my being, in my soul, whatever you want to call it, my consciousness. I knew it, that peace that I received was temporary, and that I had to learn to grow that own peace.
That's right. You had to continue to cultivate it, for it to flourish in your life. So, what did that look like? And while I have a zillion questions, but I'm trying not to overwhelm Greg. But while you're on this, so we're still in the 5-week period, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've went into church. You have had an I think it's safe to say you've had an encounter with God, a personal encounter.
Yeah, I had a spiritual experience.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And it's very real in his life, and I believe he'll tell you that as well. And just like he said, so when he leaves that experience, he has to continue to nurture that, to promote that peace in his life for it to grow. While he's doing that, he still has a family, right? You still have life to live.
And a job.
And
all those
and
things.
Kids, maybe an activity. Yes, just, and a wife. I mean, just everything. So what do those days look like for you between that and your first appointment?
Well, I maybe didn't handle it the healthiest way, because the way I handled it was just avoid it. Don't talk about it.
That's
don't
right,
acknowledge it. Just go about your day like it doesn't exist.
Okay.
And that works really well for a short period of time. And I walked that path out as far as I could walk it. Just avoid it. Don't talk about it. Act like it's not real. Go about your life. Be this stoic figure. And I had to deal with that. I had to deal with that down the line too. Eventually, that came home to roost as well. So I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was tough. My daughter was young, but really, I think that was for the best. Because she didn't really have an understanding of what was going on.
Right.
And we were able to shield her from a lot of the really heavy times. I mean, she knows now. As much as a 12-year-old.
Right.
Can know about a cancer journey, and I'm grateful that she was so young and we were able to shield her so much from those really, really bad, hard days. But so the 5 weeks came. They went. We got to Morgantown. We see the doctors. More scans, more waiting. And finally, we get to an oncology surgeon, and he's like, we're going in. He's like, we'll do the scan. Whatever the scan shows, wherever there's cancer, we're going to go in and we're going to cut it out. So we get the results back. Turns out it's isolated right now. It's just under this right arm. The tumor has now grown from, when this initially started, we're talking smaller than a ping pong ball. And to the day before the surgery, this thing is like a softball in my right arm.
Really? Essentially in 5 weeks,
maybe
6 weeks or so.
It took off. And I contribute a lot of that just to the stress of that situation. It really, I don't know, I don't want to sound like I'm a scientist, but I think, disease is able to flourish during stressful situations. You ever notice that? You get really stressed and you'll get sick, you get a cold or something.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm not trying to act like I'm a doctor.
No, I agree.
But that's my thoughts.
We went through nothing comparison. But I'm going to interject here. It's not like we're in the Olympics of what's harder.
No.
When you compare people's hurt, grief, journey, whatever. But just to reiterate what he's saying as far as stress, we went through some stressful things. I started having heart palpitations and migraines and all of this. And once we ruled out everything medically, we zeroed in on what was going on. I'm like, oh shoot, you know,
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah.
But that's just to say, yes, stress, I do believe, breeds
Yeah.
nothing but harm in your body. Yeah,
Yeah.
and disease. I agree. Yeah.
No, and I'd love to touch on your point about this
Yeah.
isn't a contest, this isn't
Yeah.
an Olympics. Like, there are people who have had disease, you know, way worse than me. There's people who fought this battle who didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I feel like it's my duty to talk about it.
Yes.
You know,
You're okay. You're fine.
because you know, I've been in this journey now for 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
I've met a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen people go.
Met a lot of
Yeah,
people.
I've seen a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people be less fortunate than me.
Yeah.
And you know, I always feel like now I have an obligation to be, you know, to just share my story, to try and help others, to give
Yeah.
back to that community.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we appreciate that also.
Yeah.
So when you had the surgery,
Yeah.
did they remove the entire tumor at the time?
Yeah, they removed 34 lymph nodes from my right arm. They removed
Okay.
part of my back muscle, the lat, part of my pec. They took a 7-inch diameter patch of skin off of my back because they thought that's where the melanoma started from.
Mhm.
And they're like, whatever, we're just taking it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, at that point,
I mean-
take whatever you think you need to get rid of it.
yeah, I'm just.
I don't care.
If you don't know anything about cancer treatment, it is just brutal
Yeah.
because they're literally trying to save your life at the expense of
Mm.
pretty much everything.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's
I hadn't
like-
thought about that.
it's like-
That's right. Yeah,
We're willing to do anything we have to do that doesn't kill you.
yeah,
We're willing to do
right.
because the chances of this not being successful is really high.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's brutal. It's
Mhm.
brutal, and yeah, I just remember I just had stitches, had wound pumps, had these bandages all over my back and everything, and it was painful. And we spent a few days in the hospital, you know, just on pain medication and off pain medication in the hospital, and we get home, and that starts the whole journey, right? And now we're got to recover from all this surgery, and my wife's having to sponge bath me and clean bandages and all this wound care stuff and empty this wound pump, and it's a lot. It's heavy. It was
Sure.
heavy.
Yeah.
It was heavy stuff.
Yeah. Were you a
Really
good patient?
quick. No, probably not.
Because let me share something. He's a man.
Yeah.
we love
We've
him, but it's
established
true.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was heavy stuff.
Sure.
And but you know, I recovered really well.
Good.
I was young. My body
Mhm.
healed well. I hadn't been through a bunch of trauma yet. I wasn't on
Yeah.
any type of treatment yet. And so they went in. They removed what they thought was all the cancer.
Mhm.
And then once I recovered from that, the next treatment plan was chemotherapy and radiation. So I go through this 8 weeks of recovering from surgery to immediately go into what is 7 months of chemotherapy, followed by a month of radiation therapy. And I don't know how in depth, because I mean, we got to tell a 10-year story here.
Whatever you want to
I
do.
don't know how
Whatever
in
you
depth.
want. That's up to you.
You want to go with all that, but I had a drug called interferon, and it's what it does is it is the chemical in your body when you get a flu, when you get
Mhm.
some sort of cold that spikes the temperature, that gives you the cold sweats and everything that comes, and the chills and the body aches. It's that drug in your body, it's the chemical in your body that does that. And they do that in attempts to upregulate your immune system in hopes that the immune system will recognize any other cancer in the body and destroy it itself.
Mhm.
And that's because there is no treatment for melanoma.
I did not know
nothing.
that.
At that time,
Yeah.
there was nothing. That was the best they had, was the interferon, which really wasn't a treatment.
Wow.
It was just to try and get the immune system stimulated
Yeah.
to fight the cancer. So we did
Huh.
that every day for a month. We had a port put in. and we stayed up in Morgantown in a hotel for a month. Me and my wife took a month off work. Actually, I think it was during the summer, so she didn't have to take off work. She's a teacher, and we were up there, and we did that, and that was hard.
Sure.
You know, we'd go early in the morning. They had to give us all these fluids, and then you'd get it took like 2 hours to get this bag of fluids. Then you got to treatment, which took like 30 minutes. And you had to get a second bag of fluids. So we were there like 6-7 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's an all-day thing.
Yeah, so like driving it wasn't even really
No, it's not
realistic.
So, can I ask you what it's like? You're in this treatment area. You're 28 years old. Within maybe 2 months, your life has been flipped upside down.
Yeah.
So physically, we hear the strain that it took on you physically, but like mentally, emotionally, what's going on? Like, what's going on with Greg at that time?
Back then, I was a trooper.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had like the Army, type mindset.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
there's a job to do. We're gonna do it.
Get it done. Yeah.
You know?
Where did your spiritual walk come into play during that time, or where were we at yet?
So we were just kind of still at like the fledgling stages of my spiritual walk and my spiritual understanding. I'd started to feed a little bit, and I'd started to bring some of that knowledge in, but you would think like, oh, you have all this free time, you're just sitting around getting chemo all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in reality, you don't feel like doing anything.
Exactly.
I mean,
I'm sure you're exhausted.
The day of my first chemotherapy treatment, the first interferon, it put me in the emergency room.
Oh gosh, really?
That's how severe the reaction was to it. They put me in the emergency room, and they give you a card that shows you're a cancer patient there at the hospital when you go to the emergency room. And once they see that, they're like, oh, we can't put you in general population.
Right.
They put me in a broom closet.
Oh gosh.
They wheeled a bed into the broom closet.
Oh gosh.
It was like, just lay down in here.
Just rest with the pine sol.
So there I was. Like, I'm looking at like mops and stuff hanging on the wall, and I'm laying in this broom closet, you know, and the doctor and nurse would come into the broom closet. And, but I mean, they were great.
Yeah. The intention was good behind it, but it is funny that you were,
and they were great, and whatever. We got the drugs figured out, we got everything balanced out, and we were able to go home early in the morning. Next day, treatment again. And it's weird. It's not weird. It makes sense because it's kind of how all of life is. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. So the longer you're in treatment, the better your body tolerates it. So by the end of the 30 days, I mean, it had certainly taken its toll on me. Yeah. But I mean, you adapt. Your body adapts so quickly. Yeah. I mean, I lost some weight, and like I have to be, my wife would be like, slow down, I can't keep up.
Yeah.
Like we're walking across the parking lot.
Oh,
yeah. Slow down, you're walking too fast.
But you're in that like, let's get this done mode, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So physically, you're in that, let's get it done. Yeah. Are you still mentally there at this time? Okay, it's like we're not. Yeah. Were you even entertaining fear at that time? No place for it.
Don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. That's weakness. You know, you're soft if you even bring it up. Like, there was no other option other than completing the mission.
Right.
It really was like this militaristic mindset that I had towards it in the beginning. Yeah. And like I said, it's really successful and it's really useful. But you, at some point, and I had to at some point, and we'll get there hopefully, you have to reckon with that and the effects that it had on you.
Sure.
And it's cumulative.
Sure.
Years and years of just pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. It eventually comes back in the forms of depression and anxiety and PTSD and all those diseases that are so common in our society today because that's really what's expected of you. You're expected to be, especially in a male, father figure.
Yes, that's right. You're right about that.
You're expected to be this stoic individual. Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, that is starting to change a little bit, but back then
we still have a ways to go. Yeah,
we do.
Yeah,
we do. So
but back then, for sure, it was intense, and
it was intense.
I think I really want people to hear, though. For me, I have always thought that getting help is one of the strongest things you can do. Not everybody feels that way. There's a lot of shame attached to it. Admitting like I'm struggling a little bit. when I say always, I don't mean that. That's incorrect. I don't always believe that.
No, there's a
But
stigma.
the last few
There's a
years,
stigma
yeah,
that
I
goes
think
with
once I entered into social work and I realized how important it is to say, hey, it's okay to say, I need a little help, because we're not meant to carry anything alone. So,
especially in this area. I mean, in
Yes.
Appalachia, we
Yes.
are born and bred
That's
to
right.
endure
That's right.
and persevere.
Boys don't cry. Boys don't. Yeah, I mean, it's true.
You know, you look at grandpas and
Yeah.
and dads and whatnot. Like, they don't go to the doctor.
Right,
I mean,
right,
they just
yeah.
you just endured. That's what you did.
Yeah.
Like, we were brought up
Yeah.
not to complain,
Yeah.
to endure and soldier on. And it's really it runs
Yeah.
deep, not just in the male species, but especially in
Right.
the Appalachian area.
Absolutely agree. So, what would you tell someone that's listening now? It may not be the battle of cancer, but it's a battle that's heavy. They need help. They know they need help. They're about to explode like they need help. What would you tell them? Or do you want to wait to get to that later?
No, I mean,
Your call.
it's great. You know, it might be great just to bring it up now in case they don't make it till later. You know, they might shut us
No,
off.
our listeners, they stay till the end, Greg.
You know, reach out. There's so many resources now, especially online. I
Mhm.
mean, you can see a therapist or whatever. Probably the day of. There's hotlines you can call. There's so many resources out there, and just maybe you don't even do it yourself. Maybe just ask somebody if they would help you.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody came to you and was like, "Hey, I'm struggling. Will you help
Right.
me?" Like, what would you do?
You'd help them
you would
in a
find
minute.
somebody,
Yeah.
right? So maybe if it's like if you just physically can't do it yourself, maybe ask somebody else to help
Yeah.
you. You know, a loved one or even a friend. I mean, if
And
a friend
sometimes-
came to me and
Exactly.
asked me, I'd be like,
Mhm.
"Let's go."
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes it can be absolutely used, the medical resources, therapists. Sometimes you're holding it all in. You just really need a friend. You just
Mhm.
need a body to say, help me, I'm drowning. I've been there
Yeah.
too, like, help me. And not to keep bringing up his mom, but she means that much to me. She was the person that came to me, and the minute I saw her, all I could get out was help me. And probably it's why I'm still here today. So, yeah, just let it out. When you first get it out, I think a lot of weight
Helps
is
a
just
lot,
lifted
yeah.
with that. Yeah.
And then it's finding that person. You
Yes.
know, like
Yeah.
I went through a few people until
Sure.
I finally found that person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she
Yeah.
probably saved my life. Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Sure. Yeah, very well. So we're through surgery. We're plugging
We're
along
in
through
chemo,
chemo. You
yeah.
got the port in. You guys are
30
in
days.
Morgantown. Now, in your mind at that time, do you think, okay, this is going to wrap this up? We'll be
Right.
done and back in
Right.
action.
Yep, it's
No
this
problem.
30 days of high dose, and then
Yeah.
you get to do 6 months of at home where you get to
Okay.
inject yourself.
Well,
That's fun.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So every 2 weeks you get to inject yourself with
Yeah.
a shot that makes you feel like you have the flu. So we did
Okay,
that.
well, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, we did that for 6 months as well, and my wife, God bless
Yeah.
her, she was the one that injected me. You know,
Yeah.
because I tried to do it myself a few times, and like
Mhm.
you would just hold that needle.
Oh, I couldn't do it. Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah.
Okay, you can do it.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I just can't do it.
Right.
Did you do it for me? And she
Yeah.
would inject me. She used the back of my arms, which is
Mhm.
really convenient because the surgery, it kind of lost some of the feeling in the back of this arm.
Okay,
So I'd be like,
yeah.
do it back there.
Yeah.
So silver lining.
Yeah.
We had radiation. At that time, there was some research coming out of John Hopkins or one of the big cancer
Mhm.
hospitals that really high dose radiation was effective on melanoma.
Mhm.
So typically, you get radiation every day for 30 days. You get a low dose every day for 30 days. With mine, I got the same amount of radiation you would get over that 30 days in 4 sessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So
Greg.
they just,
What was that like physically? I mean.
you know, honestly, radiation is one of the easiest things you ever do.
Oh, okay.
But it is also one of the most long-lasting and impactful things that I did.
Really.
Yeah. Of my entire cancer journey, I say this, and I want people to really, like, if you listen to this and you're going through this, or you know
Yeah.
somebody's going through this, like, trust your doctors, listen to your doctors.
Yeah.
They know what's best. But if I could do one thing over, it would probably be the radiation. Like, I would hesitate to do that again to my body.
You would slow
So
it down,
impactful.
or just not do it at all.
I would
Not
look
sure.
at not doing it at all
Yeah.
because it is so long-term impactful to
Sure.
your body. And it could be due to the way I had it.
Yeah.
Because once we got to the other hospital and they looked at my records and they were like, wow, I've heard this, wow, you had a lot of radiation. I'm like, what does that mean?
Well,
Can you quantify that for me? Like, what is a lot of radiation?
Yeah.
For an oncologist to say, wow, you had a lot of radiation.
That's a lot,
Yeah, so I've never really dug into it, but
Yeah.
I know it was really impactful. Like, long term, short term, you don't even know what's going on. So we did all that, and in between, you're going every 3 months. You're going to get your scans, and so we can talk about scanxiety.
Yeah, please do.
Everything that comes with that. Is, I compare that to, and we'll just maybe people don't know, like in your initial first, I think 2 years of once you have a cancer diagnosis, you go every 3 months. Quarterly, you go every 3 months and get scans, and then it goes to semi-annual, and then you go 5 year. You can move to once a year.
And in the scans, they are looking to see if the cancer is still present, if it's shrinking, if it's gone, or if it's went the other way. Correct?
Yeah. And they're doing like
so
whole
scans
body
are
scans.
a big deal.
Yeah, and I compare a scan to being on trial with the possibility of a death sentence. Like you're just sitting and waiting. It's completely out of your hands. You have no control whatsoever. I see people just sit there and you watching the jury read the verdict. Like that's exactly what it's like. You're waiting for the doctor to come in and read the verdict to you, like a life or death.
Yeah. Do you find out that day, or do you have to come home and they call you?
It varies by location. Now we find out usually day off.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
As that should be. Like if I have any voice, I have zero pull, but you should find out that day. Yeah.
Typically now we find out day off, which is really good. But have had instances where we've had the scans done and then we've had to go like the next week to the doctor or whatever. So we've done it both ways, and finding out day off, it's hard because it's a long day because you have to do the scans, and the scans are never easy. It's hours depending on what they're doing. PET scans and CTs and MRIs and.
Like, is your mind just going nuts at that time?
For sure.
I mean, really, just of all the what ifs or could be, or oh, I felt this, they're going to find that. I mean, is that accurate to say? I mean,
it gets easier with time.
Does it?
But that first little bit, every time your big toe hurts, you're like, oh, that's cancer.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I would think that.
It's so rooted. It gets so deep in you because it's so traumatic.
Yeah.
Like everything, like you get a hangnail, you're like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, that's related to it. That's it. It's spread.
It's coming back.
Yeah.
And that eases with time.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of always there.
In the back of your mind.
It never really goes away.
Yeah.
And scans are so hard, so impactful on your life, your routine. My heart goes out to anybody that has regular cancer scans because it's really hard.
Yeah, and it's something that people, I'm not directly going through it, nor is anyone super close to me, so we need to hear that to know, like, it's a real deal. It's a real thing. You may not want to go bowling one night because you got a scan the next day, so you'd rather stay home and just let's get through this and process it. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. Just for a support system of someone walking through this, extend grace during scan times.
Sure.
I mean, that's when they need that encouragement, but also might need a little space or may need a bigger hug.
And it's really that whole week before.
Yeah.
Really with me, like it's that whole week. It takes me to just kind of mentally, like I really kind of have to shut some stuff out.
Yeah.
And, find some more peace and some calm in my life, and just really be guarded over my time and my activities because I know how stressful it is, and how easy I can get. Off path, because you're just under so much stress.
Yeah.
You don't really realize it, it's just kind of like under the surface stress, because it's building and it's coming.
Yeah.
And I've learned over 10 years how to really guard those weeks leading up to it. And it used to be like, we'd drive up day of, we'd do scans, I'd come back, I'd go to work the next day.
Gosh.
And now, like, I take the day before off.
Good.
I take that day off, and I take the day after off.
Absolutely.
Like I just take those whole 3 days off.
Yeah.
And that's just gives me time, like I said, to guard myself from the outside world, and then also just recover a bit.
Yeah.
You know, because it's so impactful.
I would imagine, now correct me, anything I'm saying, but I'm going to use the word tense. I don't know if that's the right word. You're kind of tense going through it. So once you hear the doctor or whoever gives you the results say, all clear, all is well, you take that deep breath, but that adrenaline has to come down some. Does that make sense, or is that off
No,
completely?
You're completely right. Like, a lot of times when I tell people, like, clean scans, they're like, oh man, you should go celebrate.
Yeah,
You should go out to
let's
eat.
go. Yeah.
You should go do this. You should go do that. You
Yeah.
should, and I'm just like, you
got to catch my breath.
you're
almost.
exhausted. You know,
Sure.
you've been fighting so hard for so long that when you finally get your goal of, you know, cancer free,
Clear. Yeah.
like, everything just drops off.
Yeah.
And you're just exhausted.
I would imagine
And it takes
so.
me days to recover from
Yeah.
that and to build myself back up.
Yeah.
It's so counterintuitive to what you would think.
Right.
You would think like you'd be out getting ice cream,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
going on walks, and you'd be doing
Yeah.
all bungee jumping, but no,
No,
you're
it's just that,
you're exhausted
yeah.
from fighting that fight for so long.
What's it look like for you? And again, Greg and I have spoken before this, but questions are coming. So he may say, hey, I don't really want to share that, and that's okay as well. But what's that look like for you and your wife? Is she on the same track? Like, she knows the week before, like,
Yeah.
because I imagine, I don't know, maybe we can get Lindsay on here, but I imagine she too is having some of her own battles that she's fighting, but yet she's got to kind of manage things while you're in your zone. Is that accurate or no?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And
Mhm.
those, what they call caregivers,
Yeah.
they're so underappreciated. Everybody
Yes.
looks at the patient and they're like, oh, you poor thing, you've been through so much, this
Uh-huh.
and that. But if you're the person giving that care,
Yeah.
that's taking care of that person daily, you're going through a lot. too.
Absolutely.
And that's not an easy job.
Right.
And I've met a lot of caregivers over my path, and they really are just saints.
Sure.
I mean, to put yourself aside, I don't have a choice.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't opt out.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But like a caregiver technically could opt out
Yeah.
and be like, you know what? I don't have to
Yeah.
do this. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do this. And they don't, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
She opted to stay in.
She-
Yeah. How long have you guys been married?
Geez, 12 years.
12.
12
You were a
years.
little iffy there, Greg. You
I
almost
know.
told him no.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. 12 years.
Yeah.
And I'm
12
sure
years.
you get her good gifts at
Yeah.
their anniversary. But, I think that is important because it does impact
Mhm.
I know your daughter was younger at the time, and, things are probably a little different now, but, I mean, the caregiver does have to, like you say, choose to be in it and then give you the space to zone out while she's probably still going to work, still juggling,
Yeah.
bills, whatever the need may be,
Yeah.
And physically, it takes a toll on you, so you may not be able to do some of the responsibilities at the house that you
For sure.
weren't. So she's picking up that, or finding someone to help pick up those needed, those things that need to be completed. So, but okay, so we've touched on that. So, where are you now with scans? How often?
Well, we're still semi-annual, so we go twice a year.
Okay.
And this next visit in March will put us at the official 5-year cancer-free mark. And
Okay.
at that point, we'll move to an annual basis
Yeah.
instead of the semi-annual basis.
Good.
But every time something happens, you get reset. So where we're
yeah.
at in the story, I remember I had my radiation in 2015.
Okay.
All that happened. All
I
my
see what you
treatment and
mean.
everything happened in 2015,
Mhm.
and everything was good. Scans were coming back clean, no issues. I don't feel any different. I mean, I'm recovering. I'm getting back to work. I was in grad school when I got diagnosed and had to
Mhm.
withdraw from grad school, so I was able to finish that. And then in 2016, routine scan. Doctor comes in. He was like, "There's a spot in your lung." And we're like, "How could this be?"
Yeah.
We've been through so much.
How long after was that?
It would have been in 2016.
2016.
Yeah, it
Okay,
would probably
gotcha.
been,
Okay.
around summer of 2016.
Wow.
When the doctor came back in, routine
Huh.
scan, comes back in, he's like, "There's a spot in your lungs." He was like, "We don't know. We don't know what it is."
Yeah. Does that just
So-
knock the breath out of you all
Oh,
over
yeah.
again?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just like, we fought so hard to get here.
Exactly.
Like, how can this be? And there's so much, like ambiguity and all of it. Like you don't really ever know anything until you get a biopsy.
Okay.
You don't really ever know what's going
What's
on.
going on.
Just looking at an image of something.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this too, like when you have images regularly all
Yeah.
the time, like they find stuff and it throws up red flags and everybody's like, oh, this is going on, and we dig down into it and it's like, no, that's just an artifact on the scan.
Wow,
You know,
yeah.
like, don't worry about
Oh,
it.
gosh.
We've had a couple of those where things have kind of spiraled out over
Yeah.
an artifact on the scan that turned out to be nothing.
Nothing.
But in this case, it was
It was
something.
something. Yeah. Okay, so now you have to go through the process of the
Yeah.
biopsy for that
So-
spot.
Well, they were like, Morgantown was like, we can't.
Oh, okay.
We don't have the specialty to be able to continue to provide you the level of care that you need.
Okay.
So they're like, we're going to send you to Pittsburgh, to UPMC. And for some reason, I wanted to go to UVA. I wanted to go to Virginia. It was about, Charlottesville, Pittsburgh. It's about the same amount distance, 3 hours and
Mhm.
change for us. And I had a really good doctor up there, really good oncologist. And he was like, I remember he like took me aside. He's like, you want to go to Pittsburgh? And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Okay. Yes,
We're
sir.
going to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh it is then.
Yeah.
And it turns out, and there is he's the best melanoma oncologist in the world.
Oh,
is in
wow.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They're doing some of the most up-to-date research is taking place in Pittsburgh. I met an individual up there who was very well off, and when he found out he had melanoma, he went to MD Anderson and all these, Dana-Farber cancer centers,
Mhm.
and they were all like, "Can you get to Pittsburgh?" And
Wow.
that's where they sent him.
Yeah.
They were like, that's where the cutting-edge melanoma
Yeah.
treatment is.
So can I ask you something and you be completely truthful? There's not a right or wrong answer.
Okay.
It's nervous now. No. Do you think that God had a hand in that gentleman pulling you aside and saying you want to go to Pittsburgh, or do you chalk that up to just chance? And
I
it's
don't
okay.
know.
It's your journey.
I hate. I think I was very fortunate that the level of care that we were able to receive was available to us.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Right.
That's really unfortunate.
Sure.
And I don't want to come across as like I'm something special.
Right,
Or I
right.
did this special
Uh huh.
or anything like that, because in reality of it, I was really, really fortunate.
Yeah.
To have such great care
Mhm.
really close to us.
Mhm.
And was there divine intervention there? Maybe in the next life we'll find
Find
out.
out.
You
Okay,
know,
yeah.
but we feel really fortunate that there was such high quality care
Yeah.
that close to us, and
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
is absolutely one of the reasons that I'm still here today.
Yeah.
It's
For
because
sure.
that treatment was so close, and I don't want to take away from people who
Yeah.
don't have access to that really high level of care that we were able to get.
Yeah.
Really, really fortunate.
So you're there. You travel to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we go to Pittsburgh. Immediately they want to repeat the scans. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
We repeat the scans, and they come back in. And I remember he had this PA with him. Her name's Melissa. She still plays a huge role in our life today, but back then I didn't even know her. She comes to the door, right? You get the scans, and you go see your doctor. So you
Okay.
get the scans, you go upstairs, and you're in a room about the size of this.
Is this your first time you've been to Pittsburgh?
First time I've been there.
Okay. Okay.
So we're in this room, and this Melissa comes in, and this PA, and she's almost like smiling. Like, this is
Yeah.
weird. She sits down in the corner, and then here comes Dr. Kirkwood himself. And I'll let you in a secret: when you're in cancer treatment, you don't want to see the doctor, because that means things are
Oh yeah.
probably trending in a bad direction.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just the
You're a little-
inside joke is
Yeah.
like you only want to see the PAs.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the doctor or the
Yeah.
surgeon.
So this time you're kind of thrown off because
Yes.
she's smiling kind of.
Yeah, and Dr.
here comes the
Kirkwood
doctor.
himself, like the
Yeah.
legend, comes in himself. And
Yeah.
He was like, good news. He's like, it's just scar tissue. He's like, we redid the scans.
Yeah.
The radiologist looked at it. He called it just scar tissue. He's like, we'll continue to monitor it.
Mhm.
He's like, I want to take you on as a patient. up here.
Oh, wow.
We want you to come up here. We want you to
Yeah.
get scans done here. We want to monitor you moving forward in the future.
Yeah.
Melissa will be your PA, your
Oh,
point of contact.
yeah. Yeah.
She still is today.
Wow.
It's great.
So she's really walked through with you.
Yeah.
I imagine she becomes almost like family.
Oh,
I mean,
she is.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
Okay. So from that marker, because of that incident, then did you have to start your schedule for your scans? Did it throw it off schedule?
It didn't.
Or no?
I mean, we were
Okay.
still at we were still at quarterly at that point.
Okay, gotcha.
We didn't really change anything. Having a lot of pain though in the right
Mhm.
arm, so we do physical therapy and we're working through physical therapy. You know, now we're probably into like 2017, early 2017.
Mhm.
I'm like, you know, this physical therapy is just getting worse. It's not getting better. And we go back up and see the doctor. The doctor's like, well, let's just do a scan.
Mhm.
I'm like, why are we doing a scan? He's like, I just think it's a good idea to do a scan. So then, like, immediately, like, alarms go off.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing a scan? You
Yeah.
know? So I remember, just like all of them, I remember we had to
Yeah.
scan. We're back in the room. You're in a small room. And Dr. Indrajit Mimi was his name. He was a small Indian guy, but I mean, just super awesome oncologist. And
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, I can see it today. He comes walking down the hallway and he's just like shaking his head.
Oh gosh.
You know?
You probably learned to read people's body language though, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you do.
I remember
You
a
do
time
little
when
bit.
we were dealing with physicians and such, and you just begin to read. And though they try, I know as a
Oh, yeah,
professional, you're a
yeah.
professional. You try not to give off.
But I knew
anything,
immediately.
but,
I knew
yeah.
immediately what he was about to tell me, and I walked out of the room. I left. I was like, nope, not doing this. I'm leaving.
Were you by yourself?
And my wife was there, and
Again, we got Lindsay as
I
the
know.
champ hanging in there. So you left.
Dr. Mimi literally chased me down the hallway.
Yeah?
And he was like, we have to do this. You
Yeah.
don't have a choice. You have to do this. So we come back, and he's like, I'll let him know back in Pittsburgh what we found. You know, we'll get you back up there. There's a 6-inch tumor across your rib cage. It was on my back.
Mhm.
It was like almost like a hot dog shape
Yeah.
tumor across my rib cage, and it was growing, you know, and there was no doubt this time what it was. And
Mhm.
and Mimi also, he always thought what they called scar tissue was melanoma in my chest as well. He wasn't really ever happy that they just called it scar tissue and didn't do anything with it. Maybe in retrospect he was right. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, you just
Second
don't
guess
know.
forever.
Yeah.
You play what if forever.
Right. And it leads to nothing good. You just
Yeah.
spiral. What if just
Yeah.
leads to, yeah.
Yeah, so back to Pittsburgh we go, back to Dr. Kirkwood, and like I said, we had the melanoma treatment.
Mhm.
That's it. There's nothing more that's approved. So we got into an FDA clinical trial that Pittsburgh had up there, and it's this new class of drugs. It's called Keytruda. Sometimes you see it on TV.
Mhm.
And they are immune therapies, and then they mix it with this gene targeting drug, this gene therapy drug
Mhm.
that targets a gene on the melanoma itself.
Mhm.
So we were very fortunate. Like I said, I mean, I'm a product of phenomenal medical care that just
Yeah.
happened to be close to us, and we got into that clinical trial.
So no more chemo. You couldn't do chemo
That
radiation, right?
is the chemo now. So
Oh,
we're
it is.
back into,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay.
that is the treatment. It's a drug called Keytruda with
In its
this
oral
gene.
form, you take it.
It was infusion,
Oh, okay.
and then the gene therapy drug was an oral drug that you took in combination with it.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
It's okay. I probably didn't explain it well.
No.
To me, like it's so like I'm like I lived
Well,
it. You know, so it's
exactly.
like-
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
like,
it's yeah.
Why wouldn't you understand that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we go ahead.
I'm just intrigued. Greg, I'm not kidding. I could talk to you for hours. Gosh. But what's going on in your mind? Like here we
Just-
are. We got to start these treatments again.
I'm
and-
still.
Are
in
you
soldier.
mad? Are
I'm
you?
still in
Oh,
soldier
you're still in
mode.
soldier
I'm
mode.
still in soldier mode.
Okay. Okay. At any time during soldier mode, though, did you just get mad and be like, "What in the
Yeah,
world?
I mean,
we'll
for
keep it
sure.
clean on here. What in the world?"
I mean, you'd have those days, you know,
Yeah.
you'd break down and cry, and you'd just be like, all right, check it off, you know, you got
Okay.
stuff to do, you got to be a dad, you got to
Yeah.
be, you know, you got to be an
Husband,
employee, a husband,
yeah, son, everything.
all
yeah.
those things you got to be, you know, and you're still in soldier mode, like, all right, new mission,
Yeah.
let's roll, you know.
But that's
let's get it
hard,
done.
you think?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It
gets heavy.
came home to roost.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, go ahead.
Shortly.
I'm jumping I'm
Shortly.
too far ahead. Okay.
And I don't know how much time we have. I don't want
Buddy,
to take
we
too
got all
much
evening.
time.
I just have to be at work tomorrow morning at 8.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. You go ahead.
So, back into treatment, back into
Yeah.
chemotherapy. Because it was an FDA trial, they could only give me the drugs in Pittsburgh. I could not. I couldn't go to Somersville or Morgantown
Mhm.
and get the infusions. Had to be done in a clinical setting at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So every 3 weeks, we drove up and got the infusions, and it was a 2-year treatment. So every 2 weeks for 2 years.
Gosh.
Every 3 weeks for
Wow.
2 years, we drove to Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
and we did it all in one day. We'd schedule the appointments at like 10 a.m. We'd get
Yeah.
up at like 4 a.m. We'd drive up there. You know, you'd see
Yeah.
your PA. She'd clear you for treatment, and then they would start the process of getting your treatment. They had to mix the drugs on site, like they're not pre-mixed drugs.
Oh,
These are
okay. So
clinical
yeah.
drugs. They had to mix them on site, so you have to wait for the pharmacist to mix your drugs,
Yeah.
drop them off, do your infusion. You have to wait so long to make sure, like, you know,
Didn't
you're
have
not
any
gonna have a
reactions.
And then we drive the 3 hours back home.
Wow.
So these are like 14, 16-hour days.
Was that physically? I mean, the ride itself was tough
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, were there any side effects from the medicines that just made like it tough physically? Were you sick? Were you tired? Headaches? Anything?
The Keytruda is an extremely well tolerated drug.
Oh, okay.
Terrible reactions
Mm-hmm.
to the gene therapy.
Oh,
To the point, initially I had joint pain. It was so severe.
yeah,
I couldn't leave the house.
yeah.
I had like compression wraps on like all my joints. Would
Yeah.
ice them, just in and out of ice.
Mhm.
And because you're on a clinical trial, like this is your best shot at living.
Yeah.
So they're not just, you just can't call them and be like, oh, you know what? I don't think it's really working. I'm gonna stop. You know,
Yeah.
that's not an option. It's
Right.
like, no, you continue treatment.
Yeah.
So I lived through the joint pain for a really long time, probably 2 months, and then it escalated to a rash started to form on my body, and same thing. It's like, oh, I got a rash on my knee. You know,
Yeah.
think we should stop? No, it was like, we'll stop if it gets to 90% of your body,
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it got well over 90%.
Is
My
that
body,
right?
My entire
Yeah.
body broke out in this rash. Got extremely sick. They rushed me back to Pittsburgh. They see me in there. They're like, all right, like you've met the criteria. We can hold treatment and we
Mhm.
can treat the syndrome. So they held treatment. They put me through some rounds of steroids and got everything settled back down. Like my entire body peeled after
Gosh.
the rash.
Yeah.
Entire body peeled.
Gosh.
I mean, just dead skin, just
Yeah.
everywhere. It was terrible.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was tough, and so we made it through that. Once we got that under control, we started back on treatment, started back on the gene therapy, was on that for maybe another month, and all the symptoms started coming back again, and they were finally like, all right, you failed the gene therapy twice now, we can hold that. You
Yeah.
know, and we'll just continue with the Keytruda. And Keytruda really turns out to be, of those 2 drugs, they didn't really know which one would be best. That's why I'm in a clinical trial. you know.
Right. Right.
Keytruda actually turns out it is the more successful drug.
Okay.
And,
Okay. Mhm.
So we went through all that in probably like the first 6 months.
Yeah.
So this is probably towards the end of 2017. We're having scans.
So you're a good 2.5, almost 3 years in, really,
Yeah,
to this journey.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and finally at the end of 2017, we have a scan, and it comes back as clear.
Yeah.
Tumor completely gone.
Awesome.
Never had surgery, never had
Yeah.
radiation. It was just the gene therapy
Yeah.
and the immune therapy, and the body recognized the cancer and was able to take it out itself.
Yeah.
So lucky, so fortunate.
Mhm.
But it's a clinical trial. You got to complete it. So even though I had a great reaction in the first 6 months,
Really.
I had to stay for the whole 2 years.
Yeah.
And I felt obligated to stay. Like,
Sure.
you know, that data
Yeah.
when I could help somebody else. You
Yeah.
know, so I was like, man, I have an obligation to stay.
Yeah.
The people who didn't make it, you know, the people who didn't get this drug, you know, who didn't
Yeah.
have those 3 hours from their house.
Yeah.
You know, so we stayed, for the next year and a half, every 3 weeks, and drove up
So you did that for another year and a half, driving
Yeah.
to Pittsburgh
every 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a lot, and so I guess now we can kind of back up just a bit.
Sure.
And that's really when things started to kind of come unraveled, was during
Yeah.
that time. When you're a cancer patient, like, the medicine cabinet comes open.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I imagine so.
because most of those drugs are labeled for cancer patients.
Right.
I remember my first day of treatment of a UPMC, they gave me a prescription of like 240 Ativan. I didn't even know what Ativan was.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it helps.
Yeah,
It
it would
helps.
take the edge off.
Yeah,
Indeed,
it's
it
really
does.
successful. They're like, you should take this the day before you come, and the day you
Yeah.
come, and maybe the day after you come, take one.
Right.
Just use it as you need to use it. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, you're having trouble sleeping at night? Well, just use the Ativan.
Yeah.
Use the Ativan. Use the Ativan. And I mean, within no time, I was taking Ativan every day.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, like, growing up, you kind of know what Xanax is.
Right,
It's
right.
got like a negative connotation,
Sure.
but
Mhm.
I didn't really know until later on just
Yeah.
how addictive, like, those benzos and that kind of stuff
They
is.
sure are. Yeah.
And it really got a hold of me quick.
Yeah.
Just finally getting to some of the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So now the medicine cabinet is open. You
Right.
are prescribed Ativan. You have it at your discretion, using
Anytime I
it
want,
daily.
can get it refilled anytime I want. Same way with pain meds.
Yeah.
This had started in 14, 15.
Yeah.
Immediately they start giving you pain meds. I never used
Yeah.
them.
I was going to ask about the pain meds.
I was like,
yeah.
I don't need that. I didn't like the way that made me feel.
Sure.
I never really found it to be helpful. I didn't really
Yeah.
like the way it made me feel afterwards. And I was like, that's just not worth it. Like, I
Mhm.
don't get enough relief from that to deal with the side effects of pain meds, of like narcotics and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Was there ever a thought of, I don't want to take them because I don't want to become addicted to them? Or was that not even an option or a thought for you at that
It just
time?
really wasn't even
Really
a thought,
wasn't. Okay.
And in retrospect now, I mean, I'll tell you, like, any living organism, human, whatever, can become addicted to a
Absolutely.
substance.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's biology. Like, I don't care how mentally tough you are
Mhm,
or how
mhm.
strong you are, and maybe we need to do a better job as a society of, like, recognizing that
Yeah.
and realizing that anybody under the right conditions
Mhm.
can become addicted to a
Yes.
substance.
Yes.
And when I say addicted, like, I was using them, like, as needed,
Sure.
but my as needed was liberal.
Yeah. Started to increase, you think? I mean, yeah.
And then the Ativan took the edge off from the
Yeah.
pain meds. So
Sure.
now, like, the pain meds were easier to take.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about this whole time about pushing it down and
Yes.
holding all this stuff in. And that started to come home to roost in the form of depression and PTSD.
Sure.
And then, of course, the meds helped that.
Yeah.
At least you think the meds,
At the time, you
the
think,
meds
yeah.
helped
They're a
that.
good Band-Aid.
They're great Band-Aids,
Yeah. Yeah.
The meds helped that, and I was just spiraling, you
Yeah.
know, and eventually I had to take off work. So I took a year off work, took a medical leave of absence from work, because I just couldn't continue just the drain of going up there and
Mhm.
getting treatment and then trying to work and hold a job. It wore me down. And really, things didn't get too bad until I stopped work. And work was really kind of a good thing for me,
Mhm.
because,
Your
you
attention
had,
is
you
somewhere
had,
else.
you had something you had to do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then, all of a sudden, now I don't have those things, and, I wasn't like out buying drugs off the
No,
street
no,
and
no.
using drugs like that, but
No.
I could see, looking back on it now, how the path that I was on at that time could
Could lead to
have
that.
led there.
So
I could have totally.
It probably, I'm going to put words in your mouth,
Yeah.
but you correct me. Do you now have, like, you can see where working men that are prescribed this medication and then they eventually get on the path of
Yeah.
addiction, how it spirals out of control and
Yeah.
it becomes their life. I mean,
You don't even mean to do it. You're
you
just
don't.
like,
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
you don't
yeah.
even mean to do it. It's like,
Mhm.
oh man, geez, my shoulder hurts today.
Yeah.
I'll take one of those pain meds.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, I can't sleep tonight. I'll
Yeah.
take one of those Ativan.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and then next thing you know, you're using them not every day, but
Right.
a lot. You're using them a lot.
But enough for your body physically.
Yeah.
I mean, even if mentally you're not, physically your body's saying, hey,
Yeah.
give me that back.
Hey, how about that?
Yeah,
Hey,
let's
how
put
about
this
that?
back in there. Yeah.
Hey, when you take that, you feel really good,
Mhm.
and right now
Yeah.
you feel really bad.
Yeah.
So why don't let's feel really good.
Yeah, yeah, let's just grab that and
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then, like I was just going off the rails. Not like in drug abuse, but just
No,
mentally. I was
yeah.
going off the rails. I mean, I was just struggling. I was
Mhm.
just having breakdowns, anxiety, and depression.
Sure.
They recognized that in the clinic, and they were like, "Hey,
Oh, they did.
hey, let's get you some help."
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
they're
good
really
that
good.
they did. That's
yeah,
great.
Yeah, there's a
Hmm.
they have a center up there. I can't remember. It's like 14 words long, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's for cancer patients. It's healthcare. It's
Yeah.
mental. What's the word?
Mental health care. Yeah.
For cancer patients. So these are
Mhm.
doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists who just deal with the cancer patients
Right,
out there. That's what
right.
they're there for.
Sure.
To support those group of people. So they have a really good
Yeah.
understanding of what those patients and what the drugs do and the
Yeah.
treatments do.
Well, and being a cancer patient encompasses so much more than just chemo and
Yeah.
radiation. There's just so much more that goes along with it. You'd almost have to have a specialist to treat everything involved in the basket,
And it turns out
Yeah.
people on this drug that I was on,
Yeah.
like 75% of them have depression.
Yeah.
At some point in the treatment.
Yeah.
Like it's really so common.
Sure.
Like I think cancer patients in general are like 50% depression
yeah.
rate. And, you're
Yeah.
up to like 75% of people who use this medication also experience depression.
Yeah.
So that was I was in a terrible place, and
So did people around you, did your wife, did your mom, did your best friend, did anybody, or did they just chalk it up to, man, he's just walking this out? It would be very difficult.
I think you think that nobody knows.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah.
nobody knows. Nobody
Right,
knows,
right.
But my wife certainly knew.
Yeah.
Things weren't good, and I'm sure moms are pretty intuitive. I'm sure
Yeah.
my mother knew that things weren't good.
Yeah.
And dads and probably friends and stuff probably started noticing too. I
Right.
mean, nobody ever said anything to me about it, but
Right.
I mean, certainly when you're struggling that much with your mental
Uh-huh.
health, I mean, it affects who you are.
It does. It changes everything about you.
It
Yeah.
really does affect who you are and how you
Mhm.
interact with people.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure people did notice, and
Well, it would be hard too. You'd almost be, I mean, you and I are friends. If I would notice, gosh, I wouldn't want to approach you with that. You're dealing with cancer.
right, you're
You
going
know,
through treatment.
I mean,
You're like
gosh,
just chalking
yeah.
up the treatment. Well, that must be the treatment.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, I can see both sides of not wanting to approach you, and then, hey, someone needs to approach him.
Yeah.
So, kudos to the medical staff
Right,
that did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they got
Yeah,
me into
good.
a couple really good doctors up there, a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And that psychiatrist, I mean, like I said, she saved my life because
Yeah.
I was on a path. Like I said, I mean, I wasn't like injecting drugs, but
No.
I was doing things that could have led to something like that
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
place in my life.
Yeah.
And she recognized that so early on.
Great. Yeah.
Immediately, she was like, "Oh, we gotta
Go make some changes.
Yeah, so it was
well,
like,
good. So good for
yeah,
that.
she's like, all right,
Yeah.
well, first thing, no more Ativan, so
Yeah.
that's gone, and she's like, and these pain meds, we're gonna decrease that as well, and she just walked me.
That's
just
great.
Right off.
Yeah.
Walked me off of everything.
So did you have to step down? I mean, did you have to go through a weaning process, or did you go through actual withdrawals, or what?
No, I mean, I wasn't to that point. Well,
Okay.
now if I'd have probably stopped the Ativan cold turkey, I
Yeah.
maybe could have had some withdrawals there.
Uh-huh.
She weaned me off that
Okay.
over time.
Sure.
We got off that. Mainly at that point, I was using it to just sleep.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
couldn't sleep, insomnia, take
Mhm.
that. It was just this terrible
Just a
cycle.
cycle,
This
yeah.
terrible cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was great. I mean, I can't just say enough good things about
Yeah.
her. She recognized it so quickly what was
Right.
going on because she'd seen it.
Yeah.
How many times has she
Yeah.
probably seen it?
Exactly. Yeah.
She'd
Yeah.
seen it so many times. So
But
she.
thank God for that early intervention, though.
Oh,
to,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, and she
Yeah.
was. I mean, she was a godly woman.
Yeah.
One time she wrote me a prescription for Grace. I still have it on my wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were going through that, when she's like, okay, now I don't know what she exactly said, but hey, we need to make some med changes. Where were you mentally, emotionally, were you still in soldier mode? Had you already collapsed from that? When
Yeah.
did you say, or did someone say to you, we got to deal with some stuff?
I was pretty much. I mean, at that point, I knew like things were bad. Like I had started
Yeah.
to have thoughts about like, all right, like, you know, what if this doesn't work out? Like,
Sure.
how are we going to end this? You know, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to just wither away in a bed somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that's the point we'd gotten to, like starting to think about the end of life.
Sure.
And doing it on my terms.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know, she recognized that, and she helped me. Of course, you know, we tried a lot of the antidepressant drugs and these types of things, and some of them were helpful. None of them were super helpful long term.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And
Did you continue in like counseling or therapy?
yeah,
or
that's the other side of it. So I
Okay.
also had a therapist who
Yeah.
he was a gentleman, and he was really great.
Good.
And so the psychiatrist got me lined out on the med side
Right.
of things,
Yeah.
and he helped me kind of deal with those things
Yeah.
that I had refused to deal with for so
Good.
long.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
Punched him down.
yeah.
Was that first session? Now, anything that gets too heavy, you
Yeah.
just give me the tap
No,
on the
you're
knee,
fine.
like cut it off, Maxie.
You're fine.
Okay, so your psychiatrist adjusts your meds, and then she says, "Let's get you in some therapy."
Yeah.
Were you like absolutely not?
Yeah, of course. I was like, I don't really need that. Like,
Yeah.
I just need some meds. Like,
Yeah.
let's just adjust these meds. I'll be fine. I'll work
Yeah.
through this. I'm a soldier. I'm
Right.
good. You know.
Right. So
Yeah.
then she shoots that down.
Yeah, she's like, so she was so good because
Yeah.
like, you know, I don't want to say like I manipulate people, but
Right.
you know, like I can talk to people and
Sure.
kind of help them see things from my view, and
Yeah.
you know, I've done that a lot in the medical
Right.
field, you know, and she was one person that I couldn't.
She was like, no, no,
You
no,
know,
sir.
she was
Thank
like,
you.
No, we're not doing that.
Good try, but you're
You
going
know?
to therapy.
Yeah.
So that appointment comes. Now, if there's anything in between this you want to share, please do. But tell me what Greg is thinking when it's time to go in the therapist's office. Did you do an office
Yeah,
visit?
then we were in the office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really great gentleman. He
Uh-huh.
did just cancer patients, and he actually did research on this drug, Keytruda,
Uh-huh.
in what they call youth, which is between 18 to 30.
Okay.
Is what they call youth age, and so he was really experienced with this drug and the
Uh-huh.
effects that it had on people in that age frame.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was so good because he was the first person that really made me deal with what if the cancer comes back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. That's a
because
lot.
up until that point, I just refused to talk about it. Like I wouldn't
Right.
talk about it. Like what if it comes back? It wasn't
Yeah.
even a question. That was a sign of weakness. You know?
Yeah.
If I talked about it, what if the cancer comes back?
Yeah.
And he really forced me to talk about those things and to confront those things, and to confront the pushing it down,
Yeah.
and then gave me tools, you know, to deal with those thoughts and those ruminating thoughts and those scary thoughts when they come up,
Yeah.
and how to deal with those properly instead of just beating them down all the time. You know,
Right.
that's what they call cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mhm.
And it really is, you know, I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it, but it's hard for me to admit, you know, that it's so useful and it's so successful and
It
it's so true. And
Oh, it
like,
is. It is.
Yeah.
Most certainly. It's necessary,
Yeah.
needed, helpful. Would you say it almost, well, I don't even want to say almost, but I mean, it frees you
It just changed my life.
exactly,
It changed my
to
life.
live as Greg without
Yeah.
carrying.
Because before then, when the negative
Yeah.
thoughts came, because
Yeah.
the negative thoughts are always going to come,
Yeah.
I just push those down
Mhm.
and refuse to deal with them.
Yeah.
And that builds up over time.
Yes, it
And
does.
it just, eventually, you got to deal with it. And
Yeah.
now when the negative thoughts come, I have the coping mechanisms and the
Right.
skills to be like, all right, let's calm down, let's take a breath. All right,
Yes.
even if the cancer does come back, you have some of the best health care
Uh-huh.
available to you. These are
Right.
your options in the future. You know, just give, you know, not jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
There's so many helpful tools in that cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, there is. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it
Yeah,
is.
it's great. It's
But
great.
I mean, it does lighten the load. Everything you push down, I mean, you're carrying, whether you
Oh,
recognize
yeah.
it or not. You've got that backpack full of bricks that you're carrying, and while you're carrying that, you're trying to maneuver life. You
Yeah.
know, so I think it's wonderful. Now, how long? how long did you have to see this therapist? Do you still? And just for all the listeners, there's no shame in that. My listeners know I've been in counseling before. I'm not currently, but have been in the past. I am a big voice and go get help. Like, come on.
Me too.
I mean, go if you need it.
I can't say enough about
yes,
it. You know,
go.
I have been through the struggles, and I've
Yeah.
seen how beneficial mental health care can be.
Yeah.
And it can be extremely beneficial and life changing.
Yes.
Evidence of that.
Yeah.
I'll usually see the therapist in like 6-week chunks.
Sure.
Like, we'll see each other for like 6 weeks, like once a week for 6 weeks, and we'll maybe work on something.
Right.
You know, during that 6 weeks, and then we'll take a break.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're in therapy all the time,
it can drain you.
it's a bit of a drag too.
Yeah.
You gotta.
Yeah, that's
whatever.
right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants to be in therapy all the time. Now, you know, this is 2023, and I started with him back in 2018, 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
Is really where, you know, they kind of got my life back on track.
Sure.
You know, now I don't see him currently, but
Yeah.
you know, I have his number.
Yeah, you could if needed.
You know,
yes.
if I had a reoccurrence of depression,
Mhm.
and it got bad, you know, I could call and get an appointment, and I can see him online.
Right.
You know, so it's not like
That's
some
good.
big thing where I got to
Yeah.
drive to Pittsburgh. I could literally call, make an appointment, and probably see him that week. He'd probably see me that week if I called and said I'm struggling.
How did that impact your marriage?
It saved my marriage.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, those two doctors, not only did they save my life, but they saved my marriage
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, a spouse is only going to tolerate something like that for so long. You know, and if I'd have stayed on that path, it would have just gotten worse.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and who would blame somebody for being like, well, look, I signed up to take care of you, but this is your kind of your own doing because you refuse to get help and get back on track.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those two doctors, the mental health care saved my life and probably my marriage for sure.
Yeah.
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 Because I mean, it would have.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I wasn't out behind drugs on the street.
No.
But I was on a
Nobody
path.
starts there.
Right.
Nobody picks it and starts there.
I can look back now and
Yes.
see that I was on a path that if I would have continued on that path, I would have made bad decisions in my life that could have
Somewhere
led
down
me,
the future.
that could have led me to somewhere where we all know people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I can empathize with
Yes.
how they end up there
Yeah.
because it could just takes a few bad decisions and
Yeah.
you can certainly.
And it
be there.
sometimes it really happens before you know it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they just won't deal or maybe don't have the opportunity to deal with, you know, whatever they're going through. It may be a different medical situation or emotional situation. They may not have the resources that you did. And, you know, so indeed, no judgment here for anyone. I mean, we all are fighting battles, but I'm grateful that somebody intervened in yours for sure.
It's like we talked about earlier, like I've been so lucky to have such good care in my life that a lot of people don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take that for granted. You
No.
know, like I'm a cancer survivor, but I'm not a cancer survivor because Greg's super strong-willed or
That's
because
right.
Greg was this superhuman and I'm tougher than cancer. That's not why I'm here today.
Yeah.
I'm here because I had access to really high-quality care and because I had a group of people around me who loved me and cared for me. And a lot of people don't have that.
No, they don't. They don't.
I'm fortunate, and I try not to take that for.
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
and though you are very humble, I mean, it's true, and I appreciate that in you. Now, I'm going to throw in, I'm not speaking for Greg, just as an outsider. I walked through some of this with his mom, not as intensely, of course, as anyone in your family, but a lot of prayer, many nights in prayer, many days in prayer for Greg and his family, and I can't help but think that there was divine intervention. And I'm not, it's his journey and his story, but I can remember praying with Betsy for certain things to fall into place, and sure enough, they did. And it doesn't make him any more special or, you know, like God's favorite, you know, I mean, it doesn't. It's just, it's one of those things we can't explain and we will never understand, but we're super grateful for that he's here. And we certainly, our heart goes out to others that maybe haven't had that same experience or that group around them or the same intervention or whatnot as well. Did I say that okay, or you want to change anything?
No, you're fine.
Okay,
You're
you
fine.
sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Look at me butting in on Greg's story. Oh
no,
my
you're
gosh.
fine.
you're fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to touch on the spiritual side of it too.
Please
because
do,
kind
yeah.
Of, but it's just so. I mean, we're talking a
Gosh.
10-year period of time. in my
Well,
life.
and there's so many factors.
Yeah,
I mean,
so much happened over that 10 years. It's hard to.
Yes.
Can you condense 10 years down into?
Yeah, you can't.
That'd be
but,
great.
But I believe what we're sharing tonight will be exactly what needs to be heard. So you share spiritually. What did that look like for you?
So, I don't want to speak poorly or of any faith or religion that's out there, because I think all religions kind of eventually kind of at the heart of themselves point to kind of the same place, whether you're a Buddhist or a Taoist or a Christian, like all kind of come back to this common place. So, we are Christians, we grew up in a Christian faith, and that Christian mentality of like, I will not be defeated, I am a faith warrior, I'm strong, that certainly helped me through treatment and through the things that I needed to go through. But ultimately, it also delayed my dealing with, I had cancer. Big push for give it no place, give it no place in your life, and to its credit, it is extremely beneficial for short periods of time to be able to have that outlook on it. It really helped me. It truly helped me having that faith that, your word's powerful, give it no thought, give it no place in your life. It helped me get through the things I had to get through.
Absolutely, yes.
100%.
Yes.
That was part of the reason I was able to soldier on.
Yeah.
As long as I did.
Yeah.
Before I ran into problems. But like I said, eventually I had to come to terms with those things and what was happening in my life and what was going on. And that was hard, and I don't want to speak poorly about any religion.
No, me either. I mean, certainly, and I know that both of us are cautious of the words we use because we want life to come to pass in us.
Yeah, nothing situation. It's not a 1 or a 0.
That's right. That's right. See, Greg said it much better. That's right. Yes, that's
and
right.
We sometimes think that like it has to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a time and a place for it, and there is an avenue in which it is very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
But it is a tool in the toolbox, and eventually you have to deal with those things. And
Yeah.
eventually you have to look. And this is what really changed my life, is I began to look within my own self.
Yes. Yeah.
And I began to see that it wasn't what I was looking for. Wasn't outside. Like the answers to my problem weren't out here anywhere, and they were inside of me.
Yeah.
And I learned to, you can call it what you want to call it. You can call it meditation. You can call it prayer. You can call it contemplation. Whatever you want to call it. I learned how to calm down everything that's going on around me.
Yes.
And look inwards to myself and realize I already have everything I need to be happy in life. And that's really when the change started to happen. Because when I was reaching for the Ativan, or I was reaching for a pain med, that was looking to an outside source to cure my pain and to make it go away. And it wasn't until Greg got settled down, got into a calm place, and was able to look within and do that really meaningful, deep work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's really what changed my life. And that's a good term for it now is what they call mindfulness.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a great term. I love that word.
Me too.
It's a free use word. Like nobody's got it trademarked.
Right.
Like you can use it.
Yeah.
Mindfulness. It doesn't really come with like any connotation of like prayer or meditation. Like automatically, like you kind of get in two camps on prayer and meditation. But mindfulness doesn't have that connotation with it, and that's really where it's at. And even in depression, I'm not a doctor, but even in depression, they're starting to see like mindfulness is a really effective treatment for depression and anxiety.
Yes, for sure.
And that's because we live so much up here. And we run these thoughts over and over and over and over and over. And it's stepping away, being able to shut this off, come to center, and just be mindful of what's going on around you and who you are. And that's really when I found out like who I was as a person, is when I was take that time to be mindful.
Mhm.
And it's so hard in our society.
Oh, so hard.
So busy.
We live in such a loud society that
Yeah.
there's always something. There's an activity, or there's social media, or there's just always something. And just to find that place of, I'm going to stop and breathe.
Yeah.
And be mindful of, okay, we're going to breathe. We're going to get to the other side of this. And yeah, I'm with Greg on that. It's really important to take the time to locate yourself. Okay, what's going on with me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and whatever your outlet may be, whether it be, you know, for me, a lot of it is meditating on scriptures, or
Which is
just connecting
awesome.
again with the presence of God. But again, I can't do that with such a loud world just chirping all the time. You have to get in. Have to get in a quiet space. For me, now I'm not speaking for Greg. I have to get in a quiet space,
right.
and sometimes I have to do it in my vehicle. Maybe I'm going to a meeting. I'm gonna tell myself. If Chris was here, he'd tell. I was super nervous to have this conversation with Greg. Greg is extremely intelligent. He has this journey.
Blushing.
You know, this journey has not been easy. And as a mother, and I'm friends with his mom, like, I rejoice seeing him. I remember when he told us, you know, there's no evidence of disease.
Right.
It was at that time, like, that's one of our own, you know, like, thank God that he's okay. So I was super, super nervous. I mean, like, super nervous. And so Chris, he went to get your water, and I just took my few minutes. I always start with, like, a deep breath. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but that's how I, like, ground myself. Like, okay, I'm present. I'm right here. This conversation is going to go the way that God wants it to go. Greg is here, and his voice is here with a purpose. But I had to connect to myself at some point and be like, bring it down, Maxie. You know, bring it down. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Everything's okay. But it's for me, and that's not the only way to meditate. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, that's what I have to do. I have to, like, look within myself, almost give myself a little pep talk, but also be quiet some and breathe. So I'm sure Greg's looks a little different. That's okay. But it matters. It matters.
If there's two things your viewers, listeners take away from this, it is the role that mental health care can play in your life.
Oh my gosh.
And the role that, we'll just call it mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because that word,
that's what it is. Yes.
Negative connotations around it. The mindfulness can play in your life, and that's really. I mean, if you've made it this far, God bless you for hanging in. Let's talk that long.
Our listeners, they hang in there.
You know, but that's just, I just can't stress that enough. Like, just
it's so true.
Busyness is the devil's tool in
Yep.
our society, and you always think you're too busy. You don't have time to set it aside and to just come into yourself. And then what's even harder is when you need it the most is when you're the busiest, right?
Yeah.
When scans are coming up and everything's going on, and I got to make hotel reservations, and I got to do this and I got to do that before we leave, and somebody's got to feed the cat while you're gone. You got all this stuff you're trying to plan and figure out, in addition to jobs and regular life. Like, that's when it is the most important to make that time, to come into that place, to get centered, to get grounded.
You have to.
If you're getting off the rails, there's been lots of times where, you know, thoughts get going, like, oh man, cancer's back, this is that, and I can go in and I have a spot in my house, I set, you know, I call it meditation.
Yeah, me too. It's okay.
And that's, you know, that's what I like to use, and I do focus on my breath and some different types of meditation and prayer. Scripture is great, man. The Psalms, if you would just meditate on the Psalms, just find one that resonates with you. That is, I'm convinced that's some of the greatest wisdom that we have in our world today is the Psalms and Proverbs, and they would just, it would change your life.
It will.
It honestly will. It did mine. It did mine, for sure.
No, I agree. Wow. What a good talk we've had. Is there anything, before I'm going to wrap up with two questions, actually I'm going to wrap up with one question, but anything that we haven't talked about, you haven't shared that you want to?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I feel like we've talked about
a lot, right? So the last question. Oh, I have plenty more, but I'm going to wrap it up and let you get home. What do you know about Greg now that you didn't know about Greg in 2015, 2016?
Wow, probably just my resilience. You
Yeah.
know, like you think you're tough, you think you can endure, and if you've never had to do it, you don't know that you can.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and so probably my resilience, and that's could be a flaw as well sometimes. As probably we've pointed out in this. Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
It's not easy to talk about,
No.
but it's needed, and I really appreciate you sharing with us and hear what Greg says. Like, get help if you need it. Get help. And I am a big fan of meditation, of mindfulness. I am. There's too much going on, and we're trying to carry too much as humans that we're not supposed to carry.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to. So take care of your mental health, and everything else will fall into place. All right, that's it. Unless you have anything.
No, it flew by, right?
It did fly by.
Yeah.
If y'all want him to come back, maybe he'll be a co-host once in a while. You just never know. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.